Hello, friends, and welcome back to r/ProRevenge. A rich neighbor is not always a good neighbor. The first story about this case. So don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. Busybody neighbor thinks she's the parking police. I have a busybody neighbor that lives across the street from me. We live in a small rural English village. The houses are old and quite tightly packed together, with a narrow road running through the center of the village that's just big enough for 2 cars to pass. My house has no parking or driveway, so I have to park my car on the road, as do a lot of the other residents. Mrs. Busybody has a big house with enough space in her driveway for 3 cars and a fancy electric gate with a remote control. The driveway is quite narrow as it runs down the side of her house. In the village, we all try to park on the same side of the road so that people going through don't have to weave in and out around the parked cars, and it's safer for children. This means I park opposite my house outside Mrs. Busybody's. One morning, getting into my car and going to work, she came out of her house and told me that I wasn't to park there anymore. I asked her why, and her response was, "Oh, you know how it is. You just want to be able to park your own car outside your own house." I said yes, I did understand that feeling, and raised an eyebrow at the irony of me doing exactly that, albeit on the opposite side. I was just trying to be courteous by parking on the same side of the road as everyone else, but she didn't see it that way. I have one tiny car, and she has 2 large 4x4s and a driveway. I spoke to another neighbor, and she'd been bad-mouthing whoever had that little white car parked outside her house, as she wanted the space outside just in case someone popped around to visit and needed to park somewhere. So I parked my car right outside my front door, directly opposite her driveway. Now there was no way that her or her husband could get in and out of the driveway in one maneuver due to the narrowness of the road, the narrow drive, their big Range Rovers, and my car opposite. I watched her for months having to shuffle her car in and out of the driveway. She couldn't say anything to me or ask me to move because, you know how it is, you just want to be able to park your own car outside your own house. And our second story. You want my manager? Okay, sure thing. So a while back, I was right out of high school and working a temp seasonal job at a clothing store that rhymes with Tracy's. I usually work in the men's department since I can actually help people pick out clothes there. But on this day, the only shift open was in what can best be described as a section for teenage girls who somehow are into high fashion, yet also shop at a store rhyming with Tracy's. Needless to say, I didn't see many customers that day. Unfortunately, one of the few I did see was completely batcrap crazy. So this woman arrives and wants to make a return on her dress. She's not exactly our usual clientele in that section, seeing as she's 50 and overweight, and the entire time she's acting like I'm an idiot, but whatever. I process the return. I refund it to her credit card and I think everything's fine. Until she asks about her coupon. Now there's absolutely no way for me to refund a coupon in this situation. In fact, I'm pretty sure no store has ever refunded a coupon in the history of coupons. In this case, I literally had no mechanism for looking up what coupon had been used, and even if I did, I can't exactly reprint coupons at the register. So I calmly informed this woman that I'm not able to refund her coupon as I have no way of seeing if one was even used on this purchase. She really doesn't like that. She immediately accuses me of scamming her and starts screaming that this is the worst company in the world because they evidently sent her this coupon for like $5 off on her birthday, and now she can't get her birthday coupon back. I'm not exaggerating. Full-on screaming. After I try to calmly explain the situation again and even show her the screen at the register to illustrate my point, she starts demanding the manager. I warn her that the manager is just going to tell her the exact same thing I am, but that doesn't matter. She screams that she wants to speak to my manager. Now, I'll admit I was a lot more petty at 18 than I am today, so I immediately put on a huge smile and said, "Of course, I'll contact my manager." I then proceeded to call my manager. Now keep in mind I usually work in the men's section. The men's section is as far away in this store as you can get from where I was working on this day, and it's a pretty huge store. So without any hesitation, I call my manager and calmly say I have a customer upset about a return and she would like to speak to him. He says he's dealing with the situation and will need a bit, but he'll be there as soon as possible. So for the next 30 minutes, I stood and stared at this woman, trying not to laugh as she completely lost her mind. The screaming about the company being the worst on earth eventually progressed to me being the worst cashier on earth. Several customers came to check out before quickly being scared off to another register. The only thing I kept telling this woman about once every 10 minutes was that the manager will be there soon. I'm not a monster, so after about 30 minutes of this, I decided I should probably get back to doing my actual job. I told the woman I would try a different manager and called the one actually assigned to my area. She arrived in under a minute. After I explained the situation and that my normal manager had inexplicably taken 30 minutes to arrive, she immediately told the woman the exact same thing I had told her, and then sent me off to tidy up some racks while she figured out a way to get the woman out of the store. I couldn't hear both sides of the conversation after that, but based on how PO'd that lunatic sounded, she never got her coupon. The funniest part, though, was that about 10 minutes after this whole thing resolved, I go back to man the register just as the first manager I called comes sprinting over completely winded asking where the situation is. I tell him the other manager handled it, and he explained there was an issue in one of the dressing rooms that took him a while to deal with. I still regret not asking about what situation in the dressing rooms took him 50 effing minutes to resolve. If her birthday coupon was only for the 5th of May 2018, you should have given her a coupon which could only be used on the 5th of May 2018. And therefore useless. And our last story. Oh, so you want to steal our money for your dying company? For some background, I moved to another state after my mom decided to relocate her private company, and the quality of the schools in our area deteriorated. This all happened around 2 years ago. We had rented a small house to live in while my parents began plans for construction of a new one about 15 minutes away from our current house. It was a tough thing to build a house from the ground up, but my parents said it would only take around a year and a half for the house to be livable. Enter our star of the show. The money stealer, let's call him Hank, was the owner of a tiny company that sold, moved, and installed home appliances, as well as painting and applying waterproof coatings to houses. My parents, who were on a tight budget, decided that Hank's company was affordable and had good reviews. Now, I've never met Hank, but my parents have told me enough stories and let me listen to recordings and phone calls of him when they began recording their conversations when things got shaky, for legal reasons. Hank has let my parents sign a contract that basically says they'll be paying for the entire thing through monthly payments. He promised them in the end, with the entire project finished and minimal problems, they should stand at around $80,000. My parents signed the contract and our financial world began spiraling out of control. Hank has sent some of his men to check out our lot about a week before the deal was made so they could make estimates for the cost, judging the size, determining how much paint to use, etc. Apparently they were satisfied and told him about the situation, which was fine. But no, 3 days after the contract was signed, Hank calls my parents to tell them that the lot was almost twice as large as he had been informed, and that he would have to add an extra $20,000 on top of our already steep payments for painting and waterproof coatings. My parents, being the financially streetwise people they are, immediately started asking questions like, "Why didn't you just come see for yourself?" Or, "Why didn't you tell us this before we signed the contract?" Hank just laughed and hung up on them. My parents were worried, having signed a contract and all, but decided not to take legal action until he tried to pull something again. We didn't hear from Hank for another month after he did the dumbest thing I could ever imagine. We got a call from our building contractor saying that they would be charging us $5,000 to bring in a machine to remove the quartz that was under our lot so they wouldn't run into complications to dig out our basement. My parents were in shock. Not understanding what was happening, they told the contractors that they had brought in their architect and several members of the contractors to the lot to search for rock and quartz in the area but found none. "Sorry to hear that, miss, but your architect just got off the phone with us and said you have an enormous quantity right under your lot." After a half hour of explaining to the contractors that a mistake had been made, we asked if the architect had given his name during the call. He said, "Yeah, he said it was Hank." Hank is not our architect. My mom was red in the face as she hung up and called Hank. Before she could say anything, Hank mentioned that he'd heard that the courts under our lot would set us back 3 years in construction and said we had to pay $100,000 in violation of expected completion time. Expected completion time? What kind of bullcrap excuse is that? My mom immediately hung up and began gathering evidence to take legal action. Our family had to hire 3 lawyers to ensure that everything would be showed or stated in the trial. Oh boy, the case was huge as the man had just added $120,000 to an $80,000 contract for appliances and paint. To cut the long and boring court stuff, the judge ruled that Hank had clearly ignored his contract and simply tried to stack money against us in hopes we would panic and pay it, and that it was illegal to charge fees outside of the contract he had made. His defense was that his company was dying and that it was on the verge of bankruptcy. Well, the judge said, you should have thought of a smarter way to steal money from people. I was laughing my butt off at this point. Hank has to pay us $100,000 for violation of a financial contract above $50K, as well as another $15K for posing as our architect and trying to force the contractors to delay the construction of our house. Construction resumed, and Hank's company filed for bankruptcy a month later. I heard he runs a cabinet company now, and from the sales record he's posted online, he's not doing well. Hank and Karen seem perfect for each other. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.